Okay, it is 2 o'clock. I am Dr. Elizabeth Jean Brumfield. I am the Distance Services Librarian and head of the Northwest Houston Center Library for Prairie View A&M University. I want to thank you all for being here for our final Tech Tuesday of the spring term. And I'm very grateful for all of the attendance we've had so far in the last, I think, 10 weeks, all of the different presenters we've had, and discussions, the lectures, the workshops, everything I think has been very educational and entertaining. And I really appreciate all of the responses and the polls. So I want to thank you all. And I am looking forward to today's presentation. This is a very special. We get a lot of students who have questions, especially doctoral students, that have questions about doing qualitative and actually quantitative analysis, but more do qualitative analysis than they do the quantitative. And so I always refer students to the videos, the YouTube videos by Dr. Bernard Mugo. And so having him here today is very special. So I'm going to turn it over to him. I want to remind everyone we won't have any more Tech Tuesdays up until September, but please in September look forward to a great series, some more continuation of AI and looking at some robotics that will be in the future. We're going to have presentations on that. And then looking at different analysis, a research data module that I am working on with Texas A&M University. So there's a lot to look forward to for the next series, the fall series of our Tech Tuesdays. So again, I'm going to turn it over now to Mr.
Thank you
Longo.
so much. Thank you, Dr. Bramfield, and it's an honor to be your presenter today and to be of help to different people around the world. So basically, I'll just take it from here, introduce myself, and just take people or take the students who are joining through the processes that we use to analyze qualitative data and how we can be able to be better at doing this. So I'll just be, or you allow me to just share my screen here and just zoom in here and let's just get through it. So the session will be basically just explaining the qualitative data analysis process, and then we're going to have a session for questions later on. So let's look at how we can master qualitative analysis, or how we can do qualitative analysis with a tool called Nvivo. So that will be the main, let me say theme, pun intended, of this presentation. So why would you listen to me, and who am I? Where do I come from? I'm Bernard Mugonganga. I'm based in Nairobi, Kenya, East Africa, for those who've traveled. And I have been working or have been in academia for at least 10 years. Initially, I was helping students with academic writing and APA and formatting. And then in the past 3 or so years, I pivoted. When I started doing my own analysis and my own studies, I started doing qualitative analysis, and I saw the tools that were there, the information was there, it was all over the place. So I had a desire to make videos that would help me because of the pain I went through. So I was making videos that would help me if I was doing it again, very organized videos or clear instructions, not just theoretical, but practical instructions. So I started making such videos, and over the past 3 or so years, I've made videos and gotten around 600,000 views and above based on free qualitative analysis content on YouTube. And I've helped more than 200 PhD students, generally in or mainly in qualitative analysis, consulting, teaching them how to use Nvivo, mainly Nvivo, and Max UDA sometimes. All these tools are kind of the same, as you'll see, but mainly Nvivo in doing thematic analysis. So with that out of the way, now you know who am I and what do I bring to the table. Let's just go through the whole process. So what is qualitative data analysis? So, and what is a qualitative analysis process, or what is a qualitative study, or how do we begin all this? So mostly a student will go and say, I want to conduct qualitative, or I want to do a qualitative study. So they will go and do a proposal that will get approved, and then they will go and write a methodology, background, literature review, all these things. Then they'll reach a point where they will say, okay, let me go collect data. So mainly we do semi-structured interviews, right? So we go and interview people, we collect their stories, we record that somewhere. So that's where the challenges begin, mainly based on my experience. So in the modern days, or right now, the time we are living right now, we have things like AI. Although AI sometimes might have some disadvantages, but AI is very good in some instances. So the first point or the first advice I would give is, when we collect the data, these days you can, like this, even someone has joined here using some Otter AI something, so they are able to get a transcript of this session. So we can use AI to record and transcribe our interviews in real time. So at this time, you don't have to go and spend weeks transcribing your data. You can use AI to do that. So one of the AI tools I would recommend is Otter AI. They are not paying me. I'm just, these are tools that I recommend on my YouTube channel, which I've used myself. So Otter AI is a tool you can use, and if you can take time to go visit their website and check Otter AI, you can use it for personal use and for recording and transcribing your interviews in real time. So after you are done recording, you still have your transcript, and you can go and proofread and check, and then that can hasten, or that can make it easier, or that can make it, or can make the process of moving forward now to the analysis faster, rather than taking a month or two to transcribe and to proofread and all that. So with Otter AI, probably the accuracy is 93% or 95%. So basically, you can use that tool. So we collect the data, then we transcribe the data. So after we transcribe the data, now we move to the other problem that arises. How do we analyze it? So this is what we are going to be covering today. How do we analyze this data, and which tools are we going to use, and which approaches are we going to use? So one of the common methods is like thematic analysis, where we identify patterns and themes across qualitative data. So I'm going to do a short practical example of that in later parts of the session. And finally, we report the findings. So the qualitative analysis process has four major steps. We collect the data, we transcribe it, we analyze it. This is why we use tools such as Nvivo, Max QDA, and Atlas TI, as we are going to see, and we report on the data. Now, having known that, what are the main approaches of analyzing qualitative data? There are many approaches that you can adopt, which include content analysis. This one, we categorize textual information, or content analysis mainly is counting. You see someone say, the word likely was mentioned by 25% of the participants. They are trying to quantify the data. That's called content analysis. We have narrative analysis that focuses more on the stories as they are told. So when we are doing narrative analysis, we focus on the narrative. Mostly, we do not even do coding and getting names. No. Narrative is, we record, then we retell the story. It's called restoring or retelling. Then we have another approach, discourse analysis. This is mainly used for people who are conducting studies, mainly those who are doing or majoring in English and literature. So, like, what's the true meaning of words? So, discourse, like, how do people communicate and all that? So, discourse analysis. Now, we also have thematic analysis as an example. This is one of the most popular approaches. And personally, as someone who's done a lot of analysis, I would recommend thematic analysis approach for beginners. So if you are doing qualitative analysis for the first time, it's better to structure your study, or to have in mind that thematic analysis is one of the easiest or one of the most straightforward approaches for beginners. So we can get that. Now, I linked this presentation will be available. Dr. Bramfield can be able to share it with anyone who can access it. She will share it in the resources. So I'll put more links in case you need to follow up and watch a more detailed video on that. Now, when do we use, because I've told you that I would advise you to do thematic analysis. So when do we use thematic analysis, or which studies are appropriate for thematic analysis? So thematic analysis is ideal when we are exploring the views and opinions of people. So it's ideal for understanding how people perceive topics or issues. Let me give you an example. Like, what are the views of people on the implementation of, or what are the views of the general population on the implementation of tax cuts? So like tax cuts for the rich. So if we are collecting views, qualitative views or written views or stories or opinions, which is not data that is quantitative, not 1, 2, 3. So we ask them about their opinions or views. We can go and analyze that and get the major themes. Like, we can get a general feeling of how the general population feels about tax cuts for the rich. So that's exploring views and opinions. We can use thematic analysis. We can also use it for examining experiences. So, which is for analyzing personal accounts or lived experiences. For instance, the lived experiences of breastfeeding mothers who have twins, or the lived experiences of individuals suffering from type 2 diabetes. These are just random examples I'm throwing at you, so you can get an idea of when. And it's not just scientific. No, we can use, or there are so many experiences of people with utilizing a given tool. So that's how we can use thematic analysis. Another way we can use it is to assess knowledge. So we can assess the knowledge of people about a given tool, about a given idea, about a given theory, so assessing knowledge so that we know whether people know about something, and understanding values. So we can evaluate the beliefs, the value systems of a certain community or a group of people. So these are just examples of when we can use thematic analysis. Remember, thematic analysis, basically the main goal is to get themes, or like what I would call salient ideas, or salient things that come out which are obvious to see and which we want to highlight as the major issues that are discussed in a given context. Now, thematic analysis approaches there are two main thematic analysis approaches. So if we can draw like a kind of a chart, we would have inductive approach on this side and deductive approach on the other side. What does this mean? That inductive approach is an approach that involves coming to the data with an open mind. So when we are conducting thematic analysis, we can do inductive, we can do deductive, and by the way, I didn't include here, we can do a hybrid. So there is no purely inductive approach or a purely deductive approach. Students have to understand this. Yes, there is a majorly inductive or a majorly deductive, but they are not pure, because we can't have a pure approach in like the normal world. Normally you will have thoughts, you have some things that you want to look for. So let me explain what inductive and deductive is, and a hybrid approach which would include the two approaches, which is also used by some more experienced researchers. So an inductive approach, we let themes emerge directly from the data. Not emerge, we develop themes. I don't like using the word emerging, I like using the word developing. So we develop themes based on the data. So we do not come to the data with preconceived ideas. We come to the data with an open mind. Then we do something we call codes. I'm going to show you what a code is. And we do open coding. We are reflexive, meaning we reflect on our biases, right? We write memos, we reflect on our biases and how our biases might affect our interpretation. Then we let the data speak to us. So inductive analysis or inductive thematic analysis is driven by the data. And then it's a bottom-up process. Bottom-up means we start getting codes. Then we look for a pattern of shared meaning across the codes. Then we get themes. Don't worry about all these terms I'm using right now. I'll try to explain most of these terms and show you practically how we do all this coding using Nvivo, as I promised in the beginning of the session. Now, what is the second approach of doing thematic analysis? We do deductive thematic analysis. So this one is different from inductive, because this thematic analysis is based on predetermined themes or based on an existing theory. For instance, let's say I have a tool that I'm using to test the happiness of people, right? So this tool, I develop it using a certain theory. So when I want to evaluate this tool, I will have ideas that I want to test. Is this tool effective? Is this tool flexible? Is this tool applicable? So those are kind of predetermined themes, like things I want to find out about this tool. So I'll go and look at the data and connect the data, which is called codes. I get codes that I connect to my predetermined themes. So deductive means we have predetermined themes. Mainly, we come up with the themes when we are formulating the questions that we are going to ask our interviews. So in deductive thematic analysis, the themes come out even before we even conduct interviews. In sometimes we formulate the themes so that we go conduct interviews to find more information to support the themes. So that's a deductive approach to thematic analysis. So having known that, this is a top-down process. So top-down, we get themes, then we get codes later. It's theory-driven, mainly, or framework-driven. We have a framework which gives us the themes. It's a confirmatory process. So we are confirming that these themes exist in the data. It's structured coding. We have a coding structure. So I have videos where I give an example. I do an inductive coding and a deductive coding. I'll provide that link. But for the purposes of this session, today we are going to do inductive thematic analysis, which is also one of the most popular approaches that is data-driven. Now, what are the tools that we use to conduct thematic analysis and other forms of qualitative analysis? We have three main tools that I would recommend to you. One is Nvivo, second is MaxQDA, and third is Atlas TI. Now, I have a preference, and it seems like most scholars have a preference for Nvivo. Nvivo is one of the most cited. If you go to scholarly articles or you read theses or dissertations of most students, they use Nvivo. There are reasons why they use Nvivo. It's easy to use. Of course, I get frustrated by Nvivo. It has more bugs, but it's kind of easier, or it gets you more, like it helps you, or you can be able to organize your data more easily in Nvivo than MaxQDA, which I've tried right now. I'll try to venture into Atlas TI another time in the year, but I hope it's a better tool because Nvivo, right now, Nvivo and Atlas TI are owned by the same company called QSR International. They acquired Atlas TI, so I think they will be kind of the same. And then we have MaxQDA. So whichever tools you use, probably your supervisor or your professor will tell you which tool you're going to use, but most students use Nvivo, which is easier to use and allows you to organize your data. I want students to understand that qualitative data analysis tools do not do the analysis for us. I always tell this to my clients over and over again. So people who come from a quantitative background assume that we are going to put our transcripts and then the tool will run the analysis for us. As we will see in this session, in qualitative analysis, we have not gotten to the point where AI is able to get the nuance or the context. We still need human interpretation, and that's the beauty of qualitative analysis and qualitative research. So it's important we do our analysis. So why do we need these tools? We need these tools to organize our data, because traditionally some scholars, or initially scholars, were using sticky notes and Excel and Word to try and get information. And when you do that, you can still do it. By the way, I've done it before. I have a video on using Word and Excel, but it's quite tedious. So we use these tools to manage the information. Now, having known the tools that we are going to use for thematic analysis, which is an approach of doing qualitative data analysis, let's have a look at one of the most effective frameworks. So we have a framework, or we have different frameworks of doing thematic analysis. And probably if you read more, you've seen that some people say they are just doing thematic analysis and they don't tell you how they did it. And all of a sudden we see them having themes. So that's not an advisable approach of doing it. It's better for you, for the goodness, or for your work to be more valid, more reliable, for you to align your methodology with your analysis. It's good to just state, the approach that you are using. So which approach are you going to use? And that's why I propose one of the most popular approaches of doing thematic analysis in the current times, which is the Brown and Clark 6-step framework for thematic analysis. Brown and Clark are two scholars that have really contributed to like coming up with a structure of doing thematic analysis, and their work is, I have shared their scholarly articles at the end of this session. So when you get this session, or when you get this kind of a presentation, you'll be able to see the articles and read them yourself, and you'll see these two scholars have really done a good job of giving us a framework that we can rely on to do our thematic analysis and to be more organized when doing thematic analysis. Now, the Brown and Clark 6-step framework is an inductive approach. It's an inductive approach. Remember, we have inductive and deductive approaches. So the Brown and Clark 6-step framework is more of an inductive approach. So what does it include? 6 very simple steps. 1, we familiarize with the data. So we, after conducting our analysis, after transcribing our interviews, we go and read them and reread them multiple times and immerse ourselves in the data, such as we understand the data and get the nuance, and we start understanding, we start seeing patterns before we even start coding. So that's the first step. Second step, we generate initial codes. So I'm going to show you an example of a code, and I'm going to define codes for you, because again, this is a very, I try to be more practical in my teaching, to just give people real things rather than just providing theories. So let's not worry about what codes are right now. I'm going to define that later in the session. The third step is developing themes. So we look for a pattern of shared meaning across the codes to get themes. So it's like we are building a house where we begin with the foundation, the codes. Then we combine the codes together, brick by brick. Codes are bricks, brick by brick. And then we construct a wall, right? The walls, or the wall is the themes. Then we review the themes. So it's like you are doing like finishing of your house. We review the themes. How coherent are the themes? How connected are they? That's the fourth step. Then we go to the fifth step. We provide a clear definition and naming of the themes. So we say this theme means this and this, because our interpretation is different from another person's interpretation. So for other people to be able to judge our work, we have to tell them what we mean. So when I say this theme, I mean this. So that's why we define and we name themes. Then we produce the report, which is the sixth step. So the production of the report is the findings report. This is normally in the fourth chapter of your thesis and dissertation. So using the Brown and Clark 6-step framework, you are able to move from having raw transcripts to having a final findings report, and you're not worried about where you are. You know where you are. I'm familiarizing with the data. I'm generating initial codes. I'm developing themes by combining codes. I'm reviewing the themes. I'm defining and naming themes, and I'm writing the findings report. Because this session has a limited time, I'm going to cover generating initial codes today. So these two, familiarizing with the data, of course, and generating initial codes, which are the main basic steps. And you can always go and follow up on more of my videos and see the other steps. I have all those videos. So let's move on. Now, we're going to use Nvivo to conduct thematic analysis. I've already introduced Nvivo to you. I've introduced thematic analysis, and I've told you that we are going to use the Brown and Clark 6-step framework. So what are we going to do today? We're going to import a transcript into Nvivo. I'm going to introduce the Nvivo to you, the Nvivo tool to you, show you the main menus that you have to focus on as a beginner. Like you would when you are driving a car, you wouldn't pay attention to the indicator that shows you where the gas tank is. You don't worry about all that. You watch the road. So I'm going to show you the main tools that we can use as a beginner and create codes. And then we are going to see how we can go from there. Now, before I go to Nvivo, I promised you that I'm going to define what a code is, and I'm going to show you examples of codes so that when we start doing it practically, you can understand where we are and what we are trying to do. So let me just first define a code, then come show you examples of code, and then come back to the definition. So simply, a code is a label or an interpretive statement to any particular information that's important to our research questions or objectives. So when you are conducting research, you have objectives that you want to meet. You have questions that you want to answer. So by coding, we only code information that we deem important to our objectives or questions. So by coding, we can say coding is a process of elimination, because naturally people talk, they digress, they provide extra information that's not needed, not in a bad way, because that's the natural way that human beings talk to each other or the conversations happen. So, but when we are conducting coding, we are trying to only extract the information that's important for our research question or objectives, because we have a page count or we have a limited number of words that we have to use to communicate. So let's look at an example of this kind of a quote I got. This is from a book by Johnny Saldana, for those who want to know. So it's a book on coding, Introduction to Coding by Johnny Saldana. You can note that somewhere, and probably if you have time, you go read that book and see like the examples that he provides there. So let me just read the passage. Just allow me to just exhaust you a bit, just reading this and then looking at the codes before we go to my examples and my examples using Nvivo. So Mrs. Jackson rises from her desk and announces, okay, you guys, let's get lined up for lunch. Row 1, 5 children seated in the first row of desks rise and walk to the classroom door. Some of the seated children talk to each other. This is sentence number 2. Mrs. Jackson looks at them and says, no talking, save it for the cafeteria. This is the third sentence. Row 2, 5 children seated in the second row of desks rise and walk to the children already standing in line. Let's look at a very simple paragraph. And don't worry about the discipline that you come from. Coding, all coding is coding. Coding is like a skill. So good coding is good coding across all disciplines. So let me just look at the first statement. Miss Jackson rises from her desk and announces, okay, you guys, let's get lined up for lunch. Row 1, 5 children seated in the first row of desks rise and walk to the classroom door. So some of the seated children talk to each other. So the first code that this person provides is lining up for lunch. You see? So they are trying to describe, they are interpreting what this statement say. So a code is a label or an interpretive statement. So these students are lining up for lunch. Let's look at the second statement. Miss Jackson looks at them and says, no talking, save it for the cafeteria. What is she doing? She's managing behavior, which is the second code. Then let's look at the third sentence. 5 children seated in a second row of desks rise and walk to the children already standing in line, again lining up for lunch. So what does that show us? That codes are labels or interpretive statements to particular information that's important to our objectives. So based on these researchers' objectives, that's why they coded what they coded. So if you want to code in the future, you have to understand your objectives and research questions and use those lenses, or use the lenses of your objectives as the kind of a sieve to sieve through your transcripts and get the right codes. Now, let's do some practicals, because we can't talk about theory the whole session. Let's do some practicals for a few minutes, for like 15 minutes. Let's do some practicals before I open the session for questions, and have an example of a study, and then do some few or develop some few codes in Nvivo. So for today's session, I'm going to give you, or I'm going to provide, for today's session, I'm going to be talking about corporal punishment in secondary public schools. Sorry, I'm in Africa, so probably this is still prevalent around here, or it's becoming less prevalent with the modern times, but this is like a study that someone conducted on corporal punishment in secondary schools. And before I go there, I still want to show you, where do I get my transcripts, and as a student, where can you get these transcripts? Although I've shared this website later, I want to show you right now like a website where you can go and download transcripts. that you can practice even before you conduct your own study. You can use other people's study to just try to perfect coding. So you can see this is a website called figshare.com. This is a website that most students, after they graduate, they share their resources here for other people, I think, to use and to try to perfect. And data sets, they share both quantitative, their journals, their transcripts, there is everything related to academics. It's a free website where people share freely. So this is where I get transcripts to use for my sessions. So back to the session, right? So looking at this kind of study, I want to go and look at my Nvivo and get this to, for the purposes of this, I'm going to just analyze one of the transcripts, and let's go and do that. So I'm going to analyze the transcripts using Nvivo, and I will introduce Nvivo. So let's go do that. So the first thing that I do is open my Nvivo by double clicking on it. So let's give Nvivo time to open so that we can look at some basic setups, and then we can import the transcript related to corporal punishment in secondary public schools, and we can generate some codes, and you can see that this is not that difficult. Probably it's just a matter of spending more time and doing more practice. So I'm waiting for Nvivo to open. We have to be patient with Nvivo. Sometimes even when you have a very strong computer, Nvivo has its shortcomings, sometimes very slow. So let's have Nvivo and let's look at it. So this is Nvivo. Currently I have Nvivo 14, but it will expire in a few days and I will upgrade to Nvivo 15. Nvivo 15 and 14, the main difference is they are saying they are using AI, that you can use AI assistant for coding. I'm very opposed to that, and I have videos coming up where I show my work in manual coding, then I do the same with AI and show that probably it's a money grab that they are trying to, or they are trying just to make more profits. Like the AI tool makes, like, you can't say that a tool is supposed to make you more efficient, not slow you down. So if I have to use AI and then I have to babysit the AI and like try to rephrase what the AI is saying, I found it to be counterproductive. I would rather have my codes generally, and not also, I've not even gone to the ethical issues. So let me not digress. This is not a session about the use of AI in qualitative analysis. Probably we'll have a session about that later. So this is about coding. So when you open Nvivo, you will see, these are my previous projects, of course, but let's just click on new project, and let's say, let me just abbreviate it. Just give it a random name. Then I'm going to browse and I choose where I want the file to go. I want it to go to documents. Click save. Then I just click next. Now, this is an important point, that never allow Nvivo to autosave your project. Nvivo, as I told you, can crash. And when it crashes, imagine having 20 transcripts and you have done coding for 15 of them, and then Nvivo crashes and you lose all your data. That's insane. I wouldn't allow it to do that. So what do? I have an insurance policy by clicking on display save reminders every 15 minutes. So I save my work manually, which is better. So when it crashes, I only lose 15 minutes. Then click OK. So Nvivo is going to open the main panel that we can do the analysis in. So let's look at some of the basic menus in Nvivo. Nvivo has 3 main menus. One, this is the top menu, another second menu here, secondary menu, and a blue menu. As a beginner, I want you to pay attention to only 2 places, the files and the codes. So the files is where we are going to import, and files is under a section called data. Files, don't worry about file classifications or externals as a beginner. So files and coding codes. Data, files, coding codes. So we are going to import our files in the file section, and we are going to develop our codes in the codes section. And that's what I'm going to teach you in the few minutes that we still have in this session. So let's close this message and let's go actually to the file section. And let me teach you, or let me show you how we import the transcripts. So I go to my folder. In my folder, I have the 2 transcripts that I want to analyze. So how do we import transcripts into Nvivo so that we can conduct thematic analysis? Remember, we said we are conducting inductive thematic analysis. And by conducting thematic analysis, we are following the Brown and Clark 6-step framework. For the purposes of this session, we are only going to do 2 steps of the 6 steps. And that's a lot because coding is where you spend more than half the time. Once you know how to code, the rest of the steps are very easy. So the 2 steps that we are going to cover today is familiarizing with the data and generating initial codes. So how do we import transcripts into Nvivo? Clicking on the file section, I can either drag and drop. So I select the transcript, I drag it, I drop it. Remember, I'm in the file section. Clicking on the file section, I drag and drop the transcript in this section. So you can see, click OK. So that's my transcript. I can double click on it to open it, and we'll have our transcript there. You can see now we have our transcript. There is another way we can import a transcript into Nvivo. We click on the file section, we go to import at the top menu, we go to files, then we go and find our documents where they are. Mine are in the desktop, YouTube, and they are somewhere in this folder and these transcripts, and I want to import interview too. Then click import. So that's the longer way. Drag and drop, or you use the import button. You have to make sure that your transcripts are closed in a Word document so that they can be imported into Nvivo. Now, let's go and do some codes. Double click on interview 1, and I'm going to read a few paragraphs, get some codes for the purposes of this session, and see how this coding goes. Now, having opened, I double click on the interview, and here you can see the interview. And now click on the code section. In the code section, I close the message. Here is where we are going to generate our codes. Personally, I like to be organized. So in the code section, I like to right click, create a new folder, and call this initial codes, because we need to track our data analysis process, right? We need to track our thematic analysis process. So you can see I have created a folder called initial codes. And many of the times, if I right click and go to folder properties, I normally like to put them or to label them. This is A, initial codes. So in the initial codes folder is where I'm going to place my initial codes. So that's one tip. So let's go and just read this kind of a transcript and get some few codes. So this is a transcript that was conducted, or the researcher was trying to conduct a study on, if I would take you back and just remind you, the study was about corporal punishment. Let's just open corporal punishment in secondary public schools. When you are in the States, secondary schools in like people who use the British system or the UK system is like high school, kind of like junior high and high school all together. So it's like, that's what they call secondary school in the British system of education. So let's look at that. Let's look at this transcript and try to make sense of it and try to get codes. Remember, codes are labels or interpretive statements to any information that's important to our research questions. So this researcher, who is called researcher 1, asks, remember I'm in the code section in the initial code. This is where I'm going to put all my codes. They ask the question, do you support the abolition of corporal punishment in enforcing discipline in your school? Give reasons for your answers. So I think they are interviewing teachers. So they're asking them whether they support the abolition of corporal punishment. The participant says, by the way, when we are coding, don't just start coding. I would have read the whole transcript, but I've read it before, so I won't waste your time reading it. But when I'm coding, I won't start coding before I read the whole paragraph. First, I read the paragraph, then I start getting codes. And you're going to see codes are like answers, to the specific questions that are being asked. So let me just read this. Do you support the abolition of corporal punishment in enforcing discipline in your school? Give reasons for your answer. So participant 1 says, yes, I do support it because corporal punishment is not an effective way to use to discipline learners. It can cause more harm than good, and learners who have been disciplined by using the practice of corporal punishment tend to have low self-esteem, and some of them can be depressed to an extent of committing suicide. So let's see. Do you support the abolition of corporal punishment? That's the question. Let's read the question again. In enforcing discipline in your school. So this person or this teacher, yes, I do support. Let's get that statement up to there. Let's drag this, drop it here to generate an initial code. So we can drag and drop, and there is another way we can generate codes which I'm going to show you. So let's interpret, what is this person saying? Do you support the abolition of corporal punishment in enforcing discipline? Yes, I do support. So supports, I code supports. Remember, I'm labeling or interpreting, supports the abolition of corporal punishment. I like to voice type, that's why you may see I'm slow sometimes, but I'm able to voice type. I think I can activate that. If you go to your computer, if you are using a Windows and press the Windows button and the H, you can voice type, and I'm going to try to do that. So let me just stop it for now. Let's just get another code. So you see, I coded that as supports the abolition of corporal punishment. Let's double click on that code and let's see the quote. You will see the quote that we got there. So let's just see that. You see, this is the quote. So the code is supports the abolition of corporal punishment. This is the quote that the interviewee provided. Let's keep getting more codes. Because this person has given so many codes to answer that question. Yes, I do support it because corporal punishment is not an effective way to use to discipline learners. So we can have two codes, one code or two codes. They say, starting here, we can code this as another way to code, drag or drop. Let me also do a drag and drop for this one. Let me voice type for this one. Believes that corporal punishment is an effective way of disciplining learners. Believes that corporal punishment is an ineffective way of disciplining learners. That's another code. That one I voice typed, which is way faster. Then it can cause more harm than good. Another code here. So they are giving reasons why they do not support, they are giving reasons why they support the abolition of corporal punishment. So it can cause more harm than good. So right click. Now I want to show you another way to code. Then select code selection or use the shortcut. We want to put this under initial codes, and we want this to be a top level code. And now we type our code in here. We activate that and type our code. Corporal punishment causes more harm than good. Then we click code selection. You can see I have that code. So that's the way we keep coding. And learners who have been disciplined by using the practice of corporal punishment tend to have low self-esteem. Again, I can highlight this statement and say, let's keep coding here. And again, here I'm going to code selection. Let's go to initial codes, top level codes. Corporal punishment can make learners to have low self-esteem. You can see, let me just close this and I will come and open it again. Let me just close it first and see the kind of codes I'm getting. You can see I'm coding freely. You can see I am not afraid of breaking things. I'm not afraid of messing things. I am coding freely. These are initial codes. We can always come and revise them. But I need to capture what the person is saying. I'm trying to be interpretive in my coding. I'm trying to interpret the information, not summarize. coding is not summarizing. We are not summarizing the interviews. We are interpreting the interviews. We are making the meaning more obvious. So you see, I've developed 4 codes in such a short time. Now, there are ways we manage codes. If you look at my transcript, now let's go back to my transcript, and you can see Nvivo is counting the codes, by the way. 4 codes. And if you go to initial codes, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 codes coming from that participant. So these numbers matter and they mean something. And also 4 references. 4 codes are what we've done. So if you go and like click on that highlight, you can see the areas I was coding. And now you see all these codes come from question number 1. This is question number 1. So how do I know which codes come from which question? There is one way that you can approach Nvivo, and that's why we use a tool like Nvivo to do coding, and that's why you should use a tool like Nvivo rather than doing manual coding using Microsoft Word or Excel. So why? Because I know this comes from number 1, so I can go and say question number 1 will be, the color code for question number 1 is red, question number 2 is blue, question number 3 is orange. So let me show you those colors. So all codes that are going to come from question number 1, I'm going to right click, go to color, and color them as red. So mark them as red, you can see. Because so that later I will know this one came from question number 1, which will make it easier for me to combine the codes to get themes, right? And this one, maybe later the theme would be, I don't want to infer or I don't want to get ahead of myself, but for this one, the code would be probably what are the shortcomings of, or what are the disadvantages of corporal punishment. So you can see this person has given us so many disadvantages. Corporal punishment causes more harm than good. It can cause low self-esteem among students, and believes that corporal punishment is ineffective. So for today's session, I will end there for the Nvivo part, and let's get back to the presentation. Now, having known what we can do or how to use Nvivo to do coding, and if you want to know how to move forward, please watch my channel. I'll provide the links and everything, and Dr. Brumfield will share with you. You can know how to go from codes to themes step by step. I have all that information on my channel, and I have the links in this presentation. So these are the links and resources. So Figshare, I've already shared with you, is where I retrieve my transcripts. I have my videos which you can explore in my channel. It's called Surviving Research. I have scholarly articles, mainly Brown and Clark and other people who have shown the use of the Brown and Clark 6-step framework for thematic analysis and how you can use that. And now feel free, I'm giving it to Dr. Brumfield if there's anyone with questions. Yeah, so you can feel free to ask any question. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. So looking as a librarian, and we have accreditation, we have SACs, and we do a lot of quantitative numbers, but if we wanted to go forward and do qualitative, like doing interviews with students, would this be a tool that we could use?
What kind of interviews, Dr. Brumfield?
Like if we ask students, like, what do you like in the library? What things do you need? Things like that.
Yeah, this is a tool that you can leverage, and you can easily get the main issues, which are what you'd call the themes. Like, what are the main, probably you can even analyze and get, like, what are the books that students like the most, or what are the best experiences they have. Yes, this is a tool you can use to analyze your qualitative data, that is the written kind of information that you may collect from students. Yes, you can use this tool.
Okay, I have one more question. So when I did my dissertation, it was quantitative. Is there a way that you can like change over, or you have to, it would be 2 different types of research?
Change over, do you mean mixed methods? Because some people
I guess that would be, but since it's already done, is there a way that I could like I wouldn't be doing interviews, but can you take the research you already have and then use that, and instead of, since I have it in quantitative, instead of using it to, since that's already analyzed in quantitative, but
Yeah.
then use the same data for qualitative?
No, you cannot, because the data
Okay.
that we use for qualitative is like we are doing right now, spoken words,
Yeah.
right? For instance, this session we've recorded it, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
I can transcribe this session in Otter AI or any other, or manually. Then I can give it to someone to go tell them what are the main themes of this presentation. You understand? So they would
Yes.
go and analyze. They would go and get codes, right? So that they combine them to form themes. So if you don't have qualitative data, which are like
Yeah.
you've not spoken to people or you've not collected data through
Mm-hmm.
interviews, and mainly semi-structured, not just rigid interviews where you allow people to express themselves, to give their opinions, then you can't really say you are doing qualitative. You have to start with the data. The data is the one that informs the approach, so that you are able to now do thematic analysis, and down the line you are able to choose a tool to use, such as Nvivo. Yeah.
Thank you. That was a very helpful answer.
Okay. Any other question, please, from the attendees?
No other questions?
Can I see the citations list again?
That's good. That's good. But I'll still, let me just go back there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, because I definitely like the thematic 6-step framework.
Yeah, that's good.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question, please?
I don't have any more. I think this is very, very, very helpful. And like I said, I've looked at your videos, and I think you do a good job of explaining. A lot of students have problems with doing, especially when you have like large um, scale projects that involve interviewing a lot of people.
Sure.
You need something like this to and can you show, you can do like graphs and stuff from this, from Nvivo?
Yeah, I wouldn't advocate, but yes, we can get more. Let's say visuals, right?
Yeah.
I would call them visuals. Yes, yes. If we are able to analyze more, but that's for another day. But you can do, and you can quantify. Let me see if I can find. Do I have an Excel? I don't have it right now, but the way Nvivo gives us the, let me just go back to Nvivo and just show the data, right? So the way Nvivo gives us these numbers, okay, files and references, and the files are the participants, right? So the files are the participants, and the references are the quotes. So these numbers, you can use them to draw bar charts, like for those who want to. I would not advocate for it, but you can also draw charts to show the hierarchy. So when we go and analyze, we'll have themes, codes, so you are able to draw very good charts. Let me show an example of a sample findings report, which I've made on one of my videos. These are just sample reports that I have. Let me go to my samples here. And let's just look at kind of visuals, because you've asked that. And
well, a lot of times they want you to do different visuals.
yeah, so these are kind of visuals that I'm able. Tables, we have, let me keep going. I have mind maps, right? You see,
It did the mind map.
I call it a mind map. This is like a theme.
Yeah, I mean, but that Nvivo did that.
Not really. It's creative, but Nvivo gives you the structure. It shows you the
Oh,
theme.
okay. All right.
I did it inside
I get it.
Nvivo. This one I did it inside Nvivo, by the way. Exactly inside Nvivo.
I
And
see.
I have videos for visualization for those who want. This is a hierarchy chart direct from Nvivo. This one shows
Okay.
which codes are more prominent. For instance, here
Oh,
it's
all
like
right.
all of them are like equally prominent from the participants. So yes, this is what we can do in Nvivo. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know.
Someone is still raising her hand.
Oh, I can't see. They can go ahead and talk.
All right.
This is Aneka again. So my research is going to have like critical I guess we'll say data analysis. So I'm going to be mixing two types of I guess qualitative data. So I'm doing a qualitative story completion and interviews. And so when I'm trying to find oh goodness, themes or coding, codes across those two types, should I be, how do I kind of make that work where you can see which code is for because there should be
Group, right?
Right, for which group, and then which codes or how they look like together. If the same themes kind of go through both the interviews and the stories that they're going to be telling, like in written form.
Perfect. That's a good question. That's a great question, by the way. And it's kind of an advanced question, but I'll answer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
for
PhD
the others.
students, you know. Woo.
But I'll answer it anyway. What we do is, you saw in the file section, right? You're going to create a folder and have the different folders. One folder will be for your individual. You said individual?
Yes.
Let's say individual, IN. Let me not even do much. So I'm going to put all the transcripts for individual here. Then I'm going to create another folder. Right click, create another folder for the other section, section 2. Let me just call it section 2 for now. So these interviews will be, so I assume, let me give you an example with my interviews. Let's drag and drop them inside one of the folders. So I will know, like from the word go, these are two kind of analysis in one project, right? So not just in the files, in the codes, I'm going to have initial codes for individual interviews and initial codes for section 2. So all along your interviews and your coding and thematic analysis, you're going to develop your analysis separately. You're going to have different folders. So you're going to get themes for this section and themes for that section. That means when you go write your report, which will have two sections, you can now look at the differences and the similarities. I hope that's what you want to do.
That's exactly what I want to do. This is very helpful. Got a proposal defense in the works. So this is very helpful, so I can convey that to my committee. Thank you.
Exactly. You're welcome. You're welcome. Any other question, please? So if no more questions, I would like to return this.
This has been very, very interesting and very helpful. And I'm glad that we taped it, because I'm going to have to go over it again.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that I'm definitely going to make it available to the graduate study. And so they will have it. But I really, really appreciate your doing this session for us. And I have to apologize. There was a little mix up in logging on that wait list that I mentioned at the beginning. I wasn't sure if I should keep it on, but there was a little issue with that. So I apologize that
no problem.
Some people may not have been able to get on. But anyway.
No problem. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Bramfield. And I would also like to tell the students who attended, like, this is just scratching the surface. There's way more. Because now, after codes, we need to get the themes. So they can follow me, and trust you me, I have all these information. I have all these videos, as you always refer them. They can follow me on Surviving Research on YouTube, on my website. I have blogs of this, like real. Those who like reading will read the blog. Those who like watching can watch the YouTube videos on Surviving Research on YouTube. So thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And as I said, this is our last Tech Tuesday for the spring. Look forward to seeing you again in September. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.